A shadow slips over the fence. The ripple of water shimmers under the moonlight, reflecting a face etched with weary desperation. She eases herself into the cold embrace of the pool, a sigh of relief escaping her lips. But a light clicks on. A voice hard as stone cuts through the stillness. "I know who you are." The camera pans down to her hand, clutching something small and metallic. A key. Her face twists in terror as a siren wails in the distance, growing louder with every passing second. Leo Vance believed his life was a meticulously crafted fortress of solitude. After a divorce that had left him emotionally hollowed and financially strained, he'd poured every last cent into this property, a secluded bungalow at the end of a long, winding lane, hidden behind a tall, wisteria-covered fence. The jewel of the estate was the saltwater pool, a shimmering blue rectangle that felt less like a luxury and more like a necessity, the only place where the relentless static of his thoughts could finally fade. He had a routine, one as rigid as the concrete foundation of his home. Every evening at 9, he'd lock the doors, turn on the motion sensor security lights, and pour himself a single malt. Tonight, the ritual felt more necessary than ever. A particularly brutal day at the firm had left him with a pounding headache and a simmering rage he couldn't shake. The silence of the house was a balm, the amber glow of the lamp a small, familiar comfort. It was the sudden flicker on his security monitor that first broke the spell. A single pixel, a momentary glitch in the monochrome feed of the backyard camera. He dismissed it as an insect, a common occurrence. But then the flicker happened again, and this time the outline was distinct. It was a person. A silhouette moving with practiced stealth along the edge of the fence, just beyond the reach of the nearest motion light. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. The rage from his workday instantly transmuted into a cold, protective fury. This was his sanctuary, his only real sanctuary, and someone was violating it. He grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight he kept by the back door, its beam a concentrated column of brightness. He considered calling the police, but the thought of waiting, of feeling helpless while a stranger trespassed on his land, was intolerable. He had to confront them, to make them understand this was his territory. He moved with silent purpose, slipping out the back door and around the corner of the house. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and chlorine. The security lights remained dark, the trespasser too far away to trigger them. He raised the flashlight, his thumb hovering over the switch. And then he saw her. She was already in the pool, her head just above the surface. She moved with an unnatural stillness. Her eyes closed, a look of profound, almost religious peace on her face. Her dark hair was slicked back, and the water dripped from the strands, catching the faint moonlight. She wasn't swimming laps. She was simply floating, submerged up to her neck, as if the water were a refuge from the weight of the world. The sight was disarming. The intruder he'd imagined, a hooded figure, a burglar, was replaced by a woman who looked utterly and completely exhausted. The fury that had propelled him outside faltered, replaced by a deep, confusing curiosity. Who was she? Why his pool? He flicked on the flashlight. The beam sliced through the darkness, a blinding spear of light that caught her directly in the face. She gasped, her eyes snapping open, wide and panicked like a cornered animal. "Who are you?" Leo's voice was a low, dangerous rumble. He held the flashlight steady, illuminating her startled, pale features. She pushed herself upright in the water, her hands gripping the tiled edge of the pool. She was wearing a simple dark t-shirt and shorts, clothes that were now clinging to her skin. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse, a barely audible plea. I'm sorry. I just needed to—" "I didn't mean any harm," Leo scoffed. "Didn't mean any harm? You broke into my property. You think that's not harmful?" He took a step closer, his shadow falling over her in the water. "I could call the police. Right now." Her eyes, a startling shade of blue, flickered with genuine fear. "No, please." "I'll leave. I promise. Just don't call them." The raw desperation in her voice was a strange anchor in the churning sea of his anger. "Why were you in my pool?" he demanded, ignoring her plea. She hesitated, her gaze darting to the side. "It's a long story." "I have all night," he said, his tone still hard, but the edge of threat had softened. He saw the flicker of some deeper emotion in her eyes, not just fear, but something else. Something like profound loss. She took a shaky breath. My brother used to live here. He died last year. In this house. This was his favorite place. I needed to be here one more time. The words hit Leo like a physical blow. He froze, the flashlight beam wavering slightly. The house had been a foreclosure, a bank-owned property he had purchased sight unseen. The real estate agent had mentioned a previous owner had passed away, but had offered no other details. He had filled the house with his own grief, his own past, and now he was faced with someone else's. He lowered the flashlight, its beam now illuminating the rippling water instead of her face. The truth of her words resonated with a painful clarity. The house was his, but the memories belonged to someone else. I had no idea, he said, his voice flat. He looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time. She was shivering, the chill of the night air finally catching up to her. I'm sorry, she repeated, her voice a little stronger this time. I didn't think anyone would mind. The house was empty for so long. He looked away, his mind racing. This wasn't a trespasser. This was a ghost, a remnant of the life that had once filled these rooms. A sense of deep, unexpected guilt washed over him. He had been so consumed with his own pain, he hadn't considered the history of the place he now called home. He turned to go back inside, a gesture of concession. Just, please leave, and don't come back. She nodded, her face a mask of gratitude and sorrow. As she began to climb out of the pool, her foot slipped on the wet tile. She stumbled, and a small rectangular object slid from the pocket of her shorts, clattering onto the ground with a soft metallic thud. Leo's eyes were drawn to it, the beam of his flashlight finding it immediately. It was a key, a small, simple key on a worn metal ring. But it wasn't the key to the back gate or a lockbox. Stamped into its surface, unmistakable and deeply unsettling, were the numbers 2491. The exact code to the security panel on his front door. He looked up, his gaze locking with hers. Her eyes, which a moment ago had held only sorrow, were now filled with a cold, terrifying calculation. The fear he had seen before was a lie. The story about her brother, a masterful performance. This wasn't a lost relative seeking comfort. She wasn't a ghost. She was here for a reason. And the surprise wasn't that she was in his pool. The surprise was that she was in his house. The surprise was that she had been there for a long, long time. His key clattered on the wet concrete, a small, innocent object that had just shattered Leo's world. He stared at it, the flashlight beam trembling slightly, illuminating the 4 digits etched into its metallic surface. 2491. The code he had spent a frantic hour researching online after he first bought the house. The previous owner had left no manual, no instructions. Leo had found a forum post from a real estate agent who had handled a similar property, detailing how the standard-issue security keypad had a fallback, a key-operated override. The key itself was a simple, generic blade, but the code stamped on it, paired with the correct sequence on the keypad, would bypass the system entirely. His gaze snapped back to her face. The mask of a grief-stricken sister was gone, replaced by an expression of cold, predatory efficiency. The soft, sorrowful blue of her eyes was now hard, like polished steel. He had been so blind, so eager to believe a story that resonated with his own pain. The exhaustion wasn't from grief. It was from calculated effort. The moment of peace in the pool wasn't an act of catharsis. It was a momentary respite from a hunt. What is that? Leo's voice was low, raw with betrayed trust and a rising animalistic fear. She didn't answer. Her eyes flicked to the key on the ground, and she moved with a sudden, fluid grace, her hand shooting out to snatch it before he could react. The t-shirt clung to her, a dark silhouette against the paler skin of her arms and legs. She held the key up, her fingers wrapping around it possessively. "You're not his sister," Leo stated, the accusation hanging in the air like a blade. A faint, humorless smile touched her lips. Of course not. He didn't have a sister. She took a step back, her bare feet silent on the wet concrete. The game was over. The polite, fragile facade had been discarded. That story was for you, to explain why I was here. It worked, didn't it? You felt sorry for me. You let your guard down. Leo took a step forward. Who are you? What do you want? My name is Isla, she said, the name a whisper on the night air. And what I want is in your house. There's nothing here, he said, shaking his head. I bought the place from the bank. It was empty. There's nothing but my stuff. He gestured with the flashlight, a frantic, sweeping motion. A few boxes. Old furniture, Isla scoffed, a short, sharp sound. It was empty for the bank. But for the man who lived here, for my father. It was a safe, a repository. He hid it so well the bank never found it. The words hit Leo with a new wave of disquiet. He hadn't just bought a house. He'd bought a secret. The real estate agent's casual mention of a death now took on a terrifying new context. The previous owner, her father, hadn't just passed away. He was a man who had secrets, and they were hidden somewhere within the walls of this place. Your father? Leo asked, his voice cracking. What did he hide? Isla's expression darkened. Everything. His life's work. His legacy. The information he refused to turn over to the people who took everything from us. They tore the house apart looking for it. They turned it over to the bank thinking it was a lost cause. But they were looking for a lockbox. Not a key. She held up the small metal object. This isn't just a key to a security panel, Mr. Vance. It's the key to a safe. The real safe. The one they never found. Leo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. I don't know what you're talking about. I've been here for 6 months. I've renovated. I haven't found a thing. You haven't been looking in the right places, she countered, her voice now filled with a cold, almost triumphant certainty. He was a puzzle maker. He loved secrets. He'd never make it simple. It's not in the walls. It's in the logic. The numbers on the key are a sequence, a code, a map. He didn't want to believe her, but the precision in her words, the chilling clarity of her plan, was undeniable. She hadn't just snuck in for a swim. She had been observing him, watching him, waiting for the right moment. The sound of his security alarm began to chirp softly inside the house. A reminder of his mistake. He had left the back door ajar when he had rushed out. She used his own carelessness against him. You have 2 choices, Isla said, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. You can call the police and tell them you have a trespasser. They'll arrive, they'll find me, they'll ask questions, and then you'll be a part of this mess. Or you can let me finish what I came here to do. Let me find what's mine, and I'll be gone by morning, and you can go back to your quiet, solitary life. He looked from her to the dark windows of his home. He pictured the police arriving, the questions, the media attention if this turned into something bigger. His divorce had already been a public spectacle. He couldn't go through that again. He was tired. So deeply, profoundly tired of drama. But the thought of letting this stranger, this liar, into his sanctuary to finish her sinister work made his stomach churn. I'm not letting you inside my house, he said, his resolve hardening. Isla took a step toward him, closing the distance between them. Mr. Vance, your house has been a shell, an empty vessel. It's time for its history to come alive again. Her eyes held his, a gaze that felt like it was looking directly into the darkest corners of his past. And besides, she continued, her voice now a low, menacing purr, I'm already in. You just don't know it yet. Suddenly, the security panel inside the house began to emit a rapid, piercing alarm. The sound was deafening, a shriek that tore through the night. The motion sensor lights on the patio and the front yard simultaneously flickered on, bathing the entire property in a harsh white glare. Isla's eyes widened in genuine panic, a rare crack in her carefully constructed composure. What did you do? She hissed, her voice sharp with accusation. I didn't do anything, Leo shouted back over the din. He was just as confused and terrified as she was. He had a brief, horrifying thought. Had she triggered a second alarm, a fail-safe she hadn't anticipated? But then a deep, resonant voice boomed from the darkness beyond the edge of the property, amplified by a loudspeaker. Leo Vance, this is Sergeant Reynolds with the state police. We have reason to believe you are harboring a fugitive. Come out with your hands up! A flood of relief and confusion washed over Leo. The police were here, but they weren't here for her. They were here for him. He looked at Isla, whose face had gone white as a sheet. Who are you, really? He whispered. his own life now completely and irrevocably entwined with hers. The amplified voice spoke again, this time with a sharp, no-nonsense edge. "Leo Vance, we have an active warrant for the arrest of a suspect we believe is on your property. They have a history of breaking and entering, and are a person of interest in the disappearance of a man named Marcus Thorne. We know you know him, Mr. Vance. You were his partner." The words hit Leo like a punch to the gut. The name Marcus Thorne echoed in the back of his mind, a name he hadn't heard in years, a name he had tried desperately to forget. It was the name of his former business partner, the man he had left behind in a bitter legal and financial battle, the very reason his life had crumbled into the fortress of solitude he now occupied. And as the police spotlight fixed on his face, he realized the woman standing before him, her hand gripping the key, wasn't here for revenge against her father. She was here for revenge against him. He wasn't the owner of a house. He was the next target. The name was a ghost. It hung in the night air, thick with chlorine and terror, a name Leo Vance had worked tirelessly to exorcise from his mind. Marcus Thorne. The loudspeaker's voice was a judgment, a damning sentence on the quiet life he had so carefully built. Leo's chest tightened, a familiar pressure of old grief and bitter anger returning with full force. He hadn't spoken Marcus's name in 7 years. Not since the day their partnership, their brotherhood, had fractured and shattered, leaving him with nothing but a pile of debt and a hollowed-out soul. Isla stood frozen, a statue in the harsh white glare of the motion lights. Her steel-blue eyes, which had held a calculating certainty just moments ago, were now wide with a fear that matched his own. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. "What is he talking about?" she whispered, her voice a thin, shaky thread. "Marcus Thorne? What does he have to do with you?" Leo ignored her, his mind reeling. The police weren't here by chance. Someone had tipped them off. But who? And why? He looked around, the world now nothing but a stage for this sudden, terrifying drama. The wisteria-covered fence that had felt so impenetrable now seemed flimsy, a mere curtain for the chaos waiting just beyond. Leo Vance. "We have the property surrounded," the voice boomed again, its volume ratcheted up, a clear signal that they were out of patience. "We know you're in there. Don't make this any more difficult than it has to be." Isla clutched the key in her hand, her knuckles white. "My father," she stammered, "he never mentioned. I thought this was just about his legacy. The information he hid from the company." "What company?" Leo snapped, his own fear giving way to a new, desperate need for answers. "You said they were looking for a lockbox. Who are they?" Before she could answer, a new voice cut through the air, this one closer and more immediate. "Drop the weapon! Hands in the air, now!" A flashlight beam, stronger and more focused than Leo's, pinned them both. A uniformed officer stood at the corner of the house, his hand on the butt of his sidearm. He was a stocky, stern-faced man with a jaw set in granite. Isla's hand instinctively tightened around the key, her body tensing, ready to bolt. "It's not a weapon!" Leo shouted, holding his flashlight up to show it wasn't a gun. "She doesn't have a weapon. It's just a key! Don't move, either of you!" the officer commanded, stepping closer. "And don't lie to me. We have eyes on the property." The last words were a cold, hard slap of reality. They had been watching. The brief, confusing confrontation between him and Isla by the pool, the lies, the fear. It had all been a show for an audience they never knew existed. Leo felt a deep, sickening lurch. His ex-partner, Marcus Thorne. Marcus was a master of manipulation, of playing people against each other to get what he wanted. He had taught Leo everything he knew about the cutthroat world of corporate intelligence, and then used those lessons to tear Leo's life apart. The disappearance in the police broadcast, the sudden appearance of Isla and her mysterious key, none of it was a coincidence. This was Marcus's game, and Leo was back in it, whether he wanted to be or not. He lowered his flashlight, letting it hang limply by his side. "Look, Sergeant, I don't know who this woman is. She snuck into my pool. She told me a story about her father, but it's not true. She's here for something else. I just found out." He was pleading, but he knew how it sounded. Pathetic. The victim of a con he'd just described. The officer's face was a mask of skepticism. That's not what our intel suggests, Mr. Vance. Our intel says she's an associate of Marcus Thorne, and you're providing her with shelter. So let's try this again. Hands in the air! Now! Isla's head whipped around to face Leo, her blue eyes blazing with a new, furious accusation. You know him? She hissed, her voice low and sharp, completely devoid of the fear from a moment ago. You worked with him? You're one of them! Leo shook his head, a single, definitive gesture. No, I haven't seen him in years. We were partners. In a tech firm. It went south. He disappeared. That's all. I don't know why they're saying I'm with him. I don't know why they're saying I'm harboring you. The officer advanced, his hand finally on the grip of his weapon. Last chance, Vance. I'm not going to ask again. Isla's mind worked with a speed that Leo found terrifying. Her eyes scanned the police officer, the house, the backyard. She didn't hesitate. With a sudden acrobatic twist, she pushed off the edge of the pool, launching herself at Leo. Wait! He shouted, but it was too late. Her wet body collided with his, and she shoved him hard, her hands pushing against his chest. He lost his footing on the slick ground and tumbled backward, his head cracking against the concrete. The world dissolved into a cacophony of ringing alarms, shouting, and a blinding pinwheel of light. When he came to, the officer was gone. Isla was gone. The deafening security alarm had been silenced, and the motion lights had flickered off, plunging the yard into a deeper, more profound darkness than before. He was alone. Dazed, with a searing pain radiating from the back of his head, he pushed himself up. He was on his hands and knees, the cold, wet concrete seeping into his shorts. He felt a dull ache on the side of his waist. He reached for it, and his hand closed around a strange, small, hard object tucked into the waistband of his shorts, just under his t-shirt. He pulled it out and held it in his trembling hand. It was the key. She had shoved him not to escape, but to slip the key onto him. But why? He looked at the key, its 4 etched digits glinting in the faint moonlight. 2491. He remembered the conversation, the chilling words she had said. It's not in the walls. It's in the logic. The numbers on the key are a sequence, a code, a map, a map. The words echoed in his mind. The number 2491 had been the access code to his home's security panel. The police had a warrant for his arrest, thinking he was harboring a fugitive. They were looking for Marcus Thorne's associate, and the only thing she had left behind was the one thing he already knew, the one piece of the puzzle that was a red herring. It was bait. Leo's eyes widened. He had it backward. Isla wasn't a ghost of the house's past. She was a ghost of his past, inextricably linked to the betrayal of Marcus Thorne. She wasn't an associate of Thorne's. She was hunting him, and she had used Leo to get away from the police, and in doing so, had made him the center of the manhunt. He was now the fugitive, and he realized something else, something cold and terrifying. The house was his sanctuary, the place he had built to escape the world. But he had been so blind, so focused on his own solitude, he had missed the most important detail. The house was not just a home. It was a lockbox, a prison, and he had just found himself trapped inside it. The silence was a vacuum. After the shriek of the alarm, the blaring loudspeaker, and the thunderous retreat of Isla and the officer, the night had descended into a quiet so profound it felt like a lie. Leo lay on the damp concrete, the sharp, coppery scent of blood from his head wound mixing with the cloying sweetness of jasmine. The key, clutched in his hand, felt like a burning coal, a damning piece of evidence that linked him to a game he didn't ask to play. He wasn't just a homeowner anymore. He was a fugitive. And the house was no longer his sanctuary. It was a cage. He pushed himself up, his limbs heavy and uncooperative. The pain in his head was a low thrum, a constant reminder of Isla's betrayal. She hadn't just escaped. She had thrown him to the wolves, leaving him with the one piece of the puzzle that made him look like a co-conspirator. The police now had a reason to believe he was in league with her. And if Marcus Thorne was involved, then Leo knew with a gut-wrenching certainty that the police were not the only ones looking. Marcus had a long memory and even longer reach. Inside the house, he moved like a shadow. He locked the back door, the metallic click a final, sickening punctuation to his isolation. He drew the blinds, a futile gesture against the watchful eyes he knew were out there. The house that had once felt so comforting now felt alien, its every shadow and creak a potential threat. He was in the lion's den, but he was no longer the lion. He was the prey. He stumbled to the bathroom, his reflection in the mirror a stranger, eyes wild with fear, a smear of blood on his forehead. He ran cold water over the wound, the sharp shock momentarily clearing the fog from his mind. He had to think. The police were outside. He had to assume they would call for backup, maybe even a tactical unit if they thought he was armed. His options were narrowing by the second. His gaze fell to the key still in his hand. 2491. Isla's words echoed in his memory, a chilling mantra. It's not in the walls. It's in the logic. The numbers on the key are a sequence, a code, a map. He had dismissed her as a lunatic, a con artist, but her actions were anything but random. She had used his own history, his own pain against him, knowing that the mention of Marcus Thorne would stop him cold. She had to have known the police were coming. She had planned this. Every single moment of their confrontation, he sat on the edge of the bathtub, the cold ceramic a grounding force. What would Marcus do? He closed his eyes, forcing his mind back to the brutal, beautiful world of corporate espionage they had once inhabited. Marcus had been an artist of misdirection. He hid things in plain sight, using systems and logic that only an expert in their field could understand. He loved puzzles, loved the intellectual high of a well-hidden secret. He never used a simple key for a simple lock. The key was always the first step to a larger algorithm, a map. The numbers weren't a code to a physical safe. They were a sequence to follow, an instruction set. He looked at the key again, the digits staring back at him. 2491. He stood up and walked to the living room, a cold, creeping certainty taking hold. What were the most logical places to hide something in a house? Marcus would think like an architect, a systems engineer. He would use the house itself as a blueprint. The numbers on the key must correspond to something. The second door? The fourth window? He shook his head. Too simple. Marcus's puzzles were always more elegant, more brutal. He walked to the large built-in bookshelf that lined one wall of the study, a feature of the house that had been left behind by the previous owner. The numbers. He saw it now. The sequence had to refer to objects or features that were unique to this house, things that the bank would never think to inventory. He ran his hand over the worn spines of the books. 2491. He focused on the second shelf from the top, then the fourth book from the right. He pulled it out. The Art of War. Nothing. He flipped through the pages. Empty. He put it back. His heart sank. He was wrong. The key wasn't a map, it was a cruel joke. But then his eyes fell on the security panel by the front door. The very panel he had bypassed with the number 2491, the same number on the key. He had assumed the key's number was the entry code itself. But what if it was the entry code to the puzzle? The first step? Not the solution. He rushed back to the study, his mind racing, a new theory taking shape. The numbers weren't just a random sequence. They were a set of instructions. The number 2491. 2 items, 4 items, 9 items, 1 item. He looked at the second bookshelf. The fourth book. He pulled it out and set it on the desk. He looked at the 9th shelf down. The first book on the left. He pulled it out and placed it next to the other. There was an old chessboard on a table in the corner of the room, a decorative piece that had come with the house. 2 items, 4 items, 9 items, 1 item. The pattern was a red herring. It was just a way to make him think. He was going to get himself killed. He was playing a game he hadn't chosen, with rules he didn't understand. But then he thought of Marcus, his old partner, the man who had stolen his life from him. He thought of Isla, her cold, calculating eyes. He was no longer playing for his life. He was playing for revenge. He went to his home office, a room he had meticulously organized with his own life. Everything in its place. He turned on his laptop. The screen glowed to life, a small beacon in the oppressive darkness. He typed the numbers 22491, a last, desperate attempt. A hidden partition on the hard drive, a partition he had never known existed, slid open. It was an old-school data dump, a hidden server he hadn't known was there. It was Marcus's legacy. He clicked on the only file in the drive, a small, simple video file. His fingers trembled as he clicked play. The face that appeared on the screen was a ghost of a man. Sunken eyes, gaunt cheeks, a face Leo knew intimately, but twisted by a profound exhaustion. Marcus Thorne. He was sitting in what looked like a damp, bare room, a single light bulb swinging overhead. A metallic cuff was chained to his wrist. "Hello, Leo," Marcus said, his voice a dry rasp, barely recognizable. The words weren't a greeting. They were an accusation. "If you're watching this, it means you've found my work. And it means Isla found you." A flicker of a smile, a ghost of the old Marcus, crossed his lips. "But you don't understand the key. You don't understand the numbers. They aren't the code for a safe. They're a countdown. And the moment you played this video, it started. You have 24 hours, 9 minutes, and 1 second to do what I told you, or the truth dies with me." The glowing numbers on the screen were a brand burned into Leo's retinas. 240901. Marcus's face, haggard and ancient, was gone, replaced by a still image of the chain around his wrist. The video was a trap, a mechanism to activate a countdown, and Leo had walked right into it. He was now a timed bomb in his own home. He frantically clicked back, searching the hidden partition for another file, any file, that could explain what Marcus had told him to do. The drive was a desolate landscape, a single folder containing the video and nothing else. Panic, cold and suffocating, seized him. The pain in his head was a distant ache now, a forgotten detail in the face of this new, impossible reality. He heard the muffled shouts from outside, the crackle of a police radio. They were circling the perimeter, a hunt that had escalated from a simple trespass to a manhunt. He was trapped in the center of a spider web, and Marcus had just cut the final strand. He heard the sound then, not the front door, not the windows, but a soft scraping sound from the wall behind his bookshelf. He spun around, his heart pounding in his ears. A section of the built-in bookshelf, a part he had never noticed, was sliding open. Isla, her face streaked with dirt, her clothes torn, slipped through the narrow gap. She looked at him, not with the cold calculation from before, but with a desperate, unreadable exhaustion. "You're not a fugitive," she said, her voice a low gasp. "You're a diversion." Leo's mind reeled. "You left me here to take the fall. They think I'm your accomplice." "I am," she said, stepping fully into the room, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. "But so are you, and so is he. The numbers on the key, they were a countdown to the data release. You triggered it. You've been playing his game the whole time." "His game? What are you talking about?" "He said I have 24 hours to do what he told me." Leo pointed at the laptop screen, a frantic, accusing gesture. "What is it?" Isla shook her head, a grimace of raw pain on her face. "He never told you anything. Marcus doesn't ask for help, he manipulates. The video isn't for you. It's for me. He knows I'm watching. He knows I've been trying to find a way in here for months." She looked at the laptop, her expression a mix of fury and anguish. "He's a monster." "My father is a monster!" The words hit Leo with a gut-wrenching finality. This wasn't a story of vengeance. It was a story of a daughter's desperate, heartbreaking mission. "He didn't just disappear," Isla said, her voice trembling. "He was taken. By the same people you and he used to work for. A ghost firm called Echelon. They used corporate espionage to destabilize companies, to drive down stock prices and create chaos. Marcus was their architect. He got too powerful, too ambitious. He held on to data he should have destroyed. The truth about Echelon, the people they hurt, the lives they ruined. He thought he could use it as leverage. They're holding him now in some black site they own, a place no one knows about." Leo's mind flashed back to the day their partnership ended, the day Marcus had walked away from their failing company, leaving Leo to deal with the fallout. He hadn't been a victim of the market. He had been a victim of Marcus's calculated ambition. "I'm not trying to free him," Isla confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm trying to expose him." All of them. He hid the data here in this house, his final masterwork. But he also created the countdown. The video you just saw? It was a kill switch. He knew I'd find a way to get in. He knew I'd find the key. The moment I started the download, the countdown would begin, and if I didn't get him out in 24 hours, the data would self-destruct. Leo's blood ran cold. He had been a pawn, but his mistake had a terrible consequence. Then what's the point? If the data is gone, there's nothing left. No, Isla said. That's the brilliant, horrible twist. He didn't account for you, Leo. He didn't know the house would sell. He didn't know you would come looking. You activated the countdown, not me. The countdown is a lie. The data is already being uploaded. He just needs me to think I have to get him out to save the data. But the data is already free. Isla pointed to a small, blinking red light in the corner of the laptop screen. A status bar was almost full. My father is a monster. He manipulated me, just like he manipulated you. He thought I would save him, but he's going to die in that black site. And he will have brought down the entire company he helped build. This is his final masterpiece of revenge. A sickening, ironic twist, a perfect, karmic ending. Marcus had set a trap for his daughter, but because of a chance encounter, his legacy of revenge was now in the hands of the man he had once betrayed. The front door exploded inward with a deafening crack. "Police, on the ground, now!" a voice bellowed. Isla grabbed Leo's hand. "We have to go. Now!" They raced through the house, a blur of motion in the flashing light from outside. Isla knew the way, and she led him into the master bedroom, where a small hidden panel beneath the floorboards opened to reveal a crawl space. They slipped in just as the police stormed into the living room. Below them, they could hear the shouts and the heavy footfalls as the police searched the house. They lay in the darkness, the damp, earthy smell of the crawl space filling their lungs. Above them, they heard the triumphant shout of a police officer. "We got him! The suspect's laptop is here!" Leo looked at Isla in the dark. The laptop, Marcus's legacy, the ticking clock, the data that was now free, it was all now in the hands of the police. They had left the evidence for them to find. "They'll have the data," Leo said, his voice barely a whisper. "They'll find Echelon. It's over." Isla's hand found his in the darkness. "No," she said, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "They'll have the data, but they won't have us. We're the only ones who know the full story, and the chase for us has just begun. The two of them, a man and a woman once separated by a pool and a lie, now shared a dark, enclosed space and a dangerous, unknown future. Their lives forever bound by a clock that had counted down to 0.